President of the Eastbourne Chamber of Commerce, and everyone at the Chamber for putting this together. Thank you very much. Thank you to you all for sparing your time to be part of the democratic process at these hustings. A huge thank you goes to the candidates for getting their schedules together to make this work. I'm delighted to say that the candidates for the Conservative, Labour and Liberal parties are friends of mine and of Eastbourne College, and I hope from today the candidates from all the parties will feel the same. Please do remember that while we can all carp from the sidelines, these folk have shown the willingness to give so much of themselves to represent us, our town, in the national democratic process. Please afford them, every one of them, the respect that that deserves. Here at Eastbourne College, we talk to our pupils about 4 values: pursuit of excellence, participation, integrity and courtesy. All apply to us in this chamber tonight. Please participate with excellent questions. Please encourage with me the candidates to answer in a straightforward way with integrity. And most of all, please treat the candidates and each other with courtesy so we can do politics in a more Eastbourne way. Excellence, participation, integrity, courtesy, EPIC. I hope we have an epic event this evening. Thank you.
So good afternoon everybody, and welcome along to Eastbourne Chamber of Commerce's Hustings event for the 2024 general election, which we should all know by now is happening this Thursday. We are very lucky to be holding this event inside this beautiful Birley Centre, and a special thanks goes out this afternoon to Tom Lawson and all the team at Eastbourne College for their assistance in resourcing this event. We're also very fortunate to have with us this afternoon an independent moderator in the form of Mr. Paul Bromley. Paul is an experienced journalist and broadcaster and has moderated live TV leaders' debates in previous elections. Thanks also to Rebecca Mayer, who is reporting on this event for the Chamber website and the Eastbourne Reporter. We're also being live streamed. We've got a couple of cameras in here this afternoon, and thanks go out this afternoon for Carol Mills for doing that for us. As the Chamber of Commerce is hosting this event, I trust that everyone will appreciate our focus of questioning this afternoon of the candidates will be on items that relate to the Chamber of Commerce. These will be economy, jobs and business. A word on everyone's seat, there is an informal voting indication form which will ask you please to provide us a little bit of feedback as to whether any of the questions and the answers we hear this afternoon may sway the way that you vote. It's completely anonymous, and it just provides everybody a little bit of feedback as to whether these type of events are useful. So, thank you to all of you that have joined us this evening, shown your interest. This is an opportunity for us to hear from the candidates on some of these topics. I hope you find the discussion interesting, and it's now my pleasure to pass us over to Paul to take us through this evening's proceedings. Paul, thank you.
3 days to go. 3 days until it's decision time. 6 candidates, but only 1 can be our MP. You've seen their leaflets, you've read their statements. Now it's your chance to hear directly from them the answers to the questions you want answered. I have to say the Chamber has received a total of 73 questions for tonight's event from 43 different questioners. So let no one say that Eastbourne doesn't have an informed and engaged electorate, because that's the highest number that the Chamber has had for any organised event. And to the relief of the candidates, we will not be asking all 73 questions this evening, probably to the relief of the audience as well. But an independent selection panel has read every single one of those questions, which covered a wide range of topics. And we would like to get through as many questions as we can tonight. If you don't get the answer this evening, please look at the party's manifestos, please go online, look at their websites, look at their social media accounts, because all the candidates have been putting information out there that may answer the question that you have submitted. And in order to do that, I'd also ask to remind the candidates to please stick to time. I will tell you how long you've got for each question. Christina Eubank will be our official timekeeper this evening, and there will be a very loud audible alert at the point at which your time is up. And at that point, I would ask you, please just finish your remarks with a word or two, just to complete your sentence. We'll allow you to go into added time, but we are not going into extra time, and we are certainly not taking this to penalties. We'll vary the order in which the candidates answer as we go down through the questions. And so we will start, you may have noticed we tried to put the candidates in ballot paper order, that's alphabetical order by surname. We almost managed it, but unfortunately Mr Munson, the Green candidate, has got a bit of a cold, and so we isolated him slightly at the end, but he is still an official part of the panel. So we're going to give you 60 seconds for your opening statements, where you can set out why people should vote for you in 3 days' time, and we'll start with Caroline Ansell for the Conservatives.
Thank you very much, Paul. Did anybody else hear when Paul said 6 candidates, the music from The Apprentice? Yeah. I certainly did. I really welcome this opportunity and this focus on business and jobs, because a really thriving local economy underpins all that we want to achieve together, whether that is top public services, whether that's opportunities for the next generation. So it is vital that we bring forward real investment in this town. That is what underpins the future success. And in that light, I will, as part of my record and my pitch to you, be bringing forward my £1 billion commitment, a commitment made under these Conservative governments of times past, to invest in our local hospital, to invest in a whole raft of different measures, whether that's schools, colleges, apprenticeships. There is really important work ahead, because this is a commitment that I need to get over the line.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr Ashdown, if you're ready, you've got your 60 seconds starting now.
Mark Ashdown, Reform UK. We are not a party of fascist, racist child killers. The press would like you to believe that, and they will try and sell that to you. But our main donator is a Muslim rich gentleman, and that comes on to a little issue, because some of the people on this board will preach to you tonight that it's very simple and all the answers are to tax the rich and the oil companies. Well, I will tell you that that's not the answer, because the rich have already left in droves. The super rich have left. Friends of mine who are rich have gone to Monaco, and they're getting out like there's no tomorrow. Oil companies, we must remember, the gentleman at the end wants to shut them down, so I don't know how you're going to tax them and get that back at the same time. So we are actually the party of common sense and logic, and we are people who stood up from industry to represent the children and the future of this country.
Thank you very much. I just remind you, stick to your party and not what other parties are promising. Okay, so if you're ready, Josh Beverini, please tell us a little bit yourself and the Liberal Democrats.
My name's Josh, and I can also confirm that I'm not a racist. And I'm an Eastbourne boy, born and bred. Our town has made me me, whether it's teachers at Cavendish who have believed in me, whether it's businesses like Picasso's that gave me my first job. Our town is truly special. We've been through a lot over the last few years, and I want to help bring our town back to its best. I want to make sure that we are the most family-friendly town in the area. That's why I've been fighting to help protect maternity and paediatric services at our hospital. I want our beaches to be the cleanest around, to bring tourists, to bring business to town. That's why I'm campaigning against the sewage scandal that Southern Water are allowing on our beaches And I want to make sure that we support the most vulnerable in our town. That's why I've worked very closely with Eastbourne Borough Council to unlock £250,000 for our food bank and for other causes to support those who need it most. I love our town, I want to give back to it. I'm local, I care, and I get stuff done.
And we'll now move on to Ian Galbot for UKIP.
Ian Garbutt, UK Independence Party. I have to say that I sympathise with a lot of you in this room because I'm sure quite a lot of you are small businesses, medium businesses and involved in business. I can actually say that I did have my own business and the rules and regulations today are that much greater than when I had my business. With taxation, business rates, you name it, the costs of running your business, you must have noticed going up and up and up and making it more and more difficult for you all. And that is where UK Independence Party believe that we need to actually get some growth in the economy by actually helping the small and medium businesses in this country thrive and create employment.
Thanks, Rowan. You made it to the very second there. Okay, we'll now move on to Paul Richards for the Labour Party.
Thank you. I'm Paul Richards. I'm very proud to be the Labour and Co-op candidate in this election. I'm not Eastbourne born or bred. I chose it actively. I wanted to come and live here. Out of all the places in the world I could live and bring up my family, I chose Eastbourne. I love the town, but I believe it could be so much better. So that's why I'm very excited about what Labour is saying about more police on the streets, about more teachers in our local schools, about shortening NHS waiting lists in particular, but also the green energy pledge to bring those bills down and revive the town centre. I don't think the town centre does us much credit, to be honest. I think we can do much better in terms of local businesses being afforded better rates, more opportunities for entrepreneurs, and use some of those vacant buildings for community use, including the community right to buy, which would allow people, entrepreneurs and startups to take over those big sites, like Debenhams, like TJDs, and revive the town centre, because if you've got a lively town centre, it means that you can have a lively town. Thank you.
You made it with a second to spare, so we'll only a second in the future round. And now finally Mike Munson for the Green Party.
Hi, I'm Mike Munson from the Green Party. This is like being interviewed for a job, only there's quite a clear indication that there is possibly only one front runner in this. I think you've been told that there are possibly two. I think that there is only one at this stage. So a bit about me. My actual employment history encompasses a whole range of different business sectors, including running county-wide mental health services in the NHS and in charities. I was a director of Surrey Supported Employment, managing national and European contracts, supporting disadvantaged people into employment. And I was a member of the Joint Strategic Mental Health and Social Care Commissioning Board, bit of a mouthful. You may not look at it, you may not think it to look at me, but I also used to be an international fashion buyer.
Thank you all very much. Just before we move into questions, there's just a couple of things there. With respect to all the candidates, it's the people here and the 73,000 other electors in Eastbourne who will decide this election, not between you to decide who's the front runner and who's not, or who the election is between. There are a few more democratic process of which you're a part. A lot of the issues that you have raised we are going to pick up in our audience questions. And there was one thing that I did want to pick up, Mrs. Ants, with you, the £1 billion figure, which you keep mentioning that has been committed under this government for Eastbourne. You've said that includes the local hospital. Now, a lot of people have asked in their questions, where is the new hospital that the Conservatives promised?
I might need more than 2 minutes.
Okay, well,
the
can you
list
just
is
give a brief...
long when it comes to the £1 billion commitment, and it goes from the new hospital, of course, which represents about half of that. Although it is a sliding scale, because the plans, if we want to talk about the new hospital, the plans are in blueprint, and a really expert team, locally and nationally, have been working for some long time to bring those plans to this place. But we were always in the last tranche of the new hospital programme, a programme I might just mischievously say, I believe Labour has said they will be reviewing. So our new hospital is possibly in question and on the ballot paper. It's a Conservative commitment, the new hospital, and it represents a serious investment in the town, not least for hospital services, but also the housing that is part of that hospital development for recruitment and retention of our nurses and doctors. And of course, in that project, there is an enormous opportunity to grow apprenticeships. And that was something that I was working in a really focused way on just before this election was called, because the new hospital is coming.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, so let's now go to our audience questions. And our first question comes from Susan Vinger. So, Susan, if you'd like to ask your question of the candidates, and for this, when we get to it, you will have 2 minutes to answer, and I will vary the order, so I'll let you know who is answering. So, Susan, can we have your question, please?
What do the candidates plan to do to reduce the level of criminality in the centre of Eastbourne in the evenings and at night?
Okay, did everyone get that question? What do the candidates plan to do to reduce the level of criminal activity in the centre of Eastbourne at night time? Well, Richard, you mentioned that in your opening statement. Would you like to elucidate first, please, in 2 minutes?
On one of my bookshelves at home, I've got a book called Blunders of Our Governments, and it's all the bad things that governments have done over the years, poll tax, you name it. One of the greatest blunders was taking 20,000 police off our streets under the coalition government. If you vacate that space, and you take those foot patrols off the towns and the estates, you breed criminality. That's a simple law of physics. You create a vacuum, something's going to fill it. So one way to address this, very directly and very quickly, is to put police on foot patrols into the middle of Eastbourne, where people live and work and do business. We know that prevents crime. We also know it leads to higher rates of detection, and we know that it creates a better bond between communities and police. So you create the trust that you need for policing to work. In this country, we have policing by consent, and it's only if we consent that it does work. So more police, as we've pledged in our early steps, but crucially on the streets.
So we'll let the candidates answer, and then we'll come back certainly to Susan, and then we'll ask the audience as well. Okay. Let's now hear from you, Caroline Ansell, on this same question, criminal activity at Eastbourne at night time.
Thank you, and that's a very important question, because the nighttime economy is something that we need to build. Not just the nighttime economy, but that out-of-season economy. Eastbourne rises and falls on our summer season. Far too much is invested in that time. We need to lengthen the year, but we need that important nighttime economy. Partnership working is clearly hugely important. So our local police officers who do patrol the town centre, and in a much more visible way, very most recently in response to some of the issues that we've seen. They are working with Eastbourne Business Improvement District and their ambassadors and their team. They're working with our door supervisors, they're working with street masters, because presence in that nighttime economy is hugely important. Presence to make sure that people not just are safe, but feel safe too. So as well as the hotspot police patrols that we do already have, there's been significant investment in some of the infrastructure in the town centre. So that might be around increased lighting, it might be around sight lines, it might be around camera, CCTV work. So it's absolutely right that we focus on this. And one particular dynamic I wanted to focus on is the concern around increasingly young people out in the evenings. And one of the things we really need to bring forward in the town centre is that youth facility, that youth hub that has been seen to be so dramatic in other parts of the town. Again, something I'm already working on, something I'm hoping to bring forward as a result of development at Debenhams, or some of those really important sites in the town where we should see housing. And on the back of that, there should be really good investment in those youth services.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Josh Birley.
Yeah, so I live in the town centre. My nearest small supermarket is the Tesco Express on Taverners Road, and I have to say I don't always feel safe going out late at night, never mind folks who are more vulnerable. Now, I'm not a career politician. I've spent my career getting kids out of crime, out of gangs. 7 in 10, in fact, of the young people that we worked with did not go on to reoffend within a year. What are the solutions to helping to tackle criminality in the town centre at night, which was the question that Susan asked? Well, number one, there's a question around enforcement. We've heard a fair bit about policing. We need to make sure that there is more community policing. We've lost lots of PCSOs over the last 10 years to the tune of several thousand. We need to restore those back onto the streets. How do we pay for it? To the question that came. Well, we have, in my view, the biggest waste of public money in policing, police and crime commissions. So many of us don't know what they do, we don't see them around. That office should be scrapped and the cash should be used to invest in that community policing. Then there's the other end, prevention. The key thing when I was working with young people was around creating safe spaces for them to develop what I would describe as norms, pro-social values, norms and customs. Things like sensitive communication, things like teamworking, things like leadership. All of these things are skills and values that young people need to enter the centre of society rather than be pushed to the margins. Under this government, youth centres in some areas have been cut to the tune of 90% without funding. I've met with lots of youth workers across the town, and I'm really keen to convene them to look at what are the patches of youth provision that are empty across town, where can we facilitate more collaboration, and where can I support bids to government or elsewhere for cash to help to generate that youth provision that young people need and deserve, and will make our community safer.
Save for the bell. Mike Monson, would you like to go next and answer this question about reducing the level of criminal activity in the centre of Eastbourne at night time?
There's been a lot of sense talked by some of the other candidates about prevention and about community policing. And there seems to be a bit of a consensus around that amongst the candidates on the panel. I think young people are often unfairly demonised, and sometimes it's about a perception of what youth are about, and people just feel threatened by groups of young people not having anything else to do and nowhere else to go. The funding for youth services has been cut back by this government and previous governments in austerity since 2009. Local authorities haven't got the money to spend on services that will deliver this prevention. Alcohol and homelessness are two of the other reasons that people get scared about walking through the town centre. We need to tackle the alcohol problems, we need to tackle the drug problems, we need to prevent these causing the behaviour that other people find threatening. There can be too much emphasis on policing, but community policing can be done by youth workers, by drug and alcohol workers. They don't have to look like some kind of private army in the streets, which can actually precipitate problems. So a much more collaborative approach, look at what the problems are out there and have peer groups work with those people to prevent the difficulties that you experience. Thank you.
And just one small point of clarification. You mentioned 2009. It was 2010 that the Conservatives first went into government with the...
Yeah,
with
it was happening before that. It was after the crash by the banks, and therefore
So that was at the end of the Labour government.
funding, so it was Labour
Yeah.
government
Fine,
as
okay.
well as the coalition government.
Okay, thank you. Mark Ashdown.
Well, you've snatched the best points already, but basically we've all got too soft. The whole country's got too soft, in my opinion. I spent half of my life living in London, and if you think it's bad down here, you ain't seen nothing yet. We're getting stabbings, murders, drugs related, most of it. A lot of the crime, if you speak to the police, and I have friends who are in the police, they tell you the bulk of it is drugs related. I was talking to somebody on Saturday, and he was responsible for sending back boat people that came across from Albania, and they came over here to sell drugs. So there's a start there.
Is this specifically Eastbourne we're talking about? Eastbourne Town Centre?
Eastbourne Town Centre, if you're not careful, will end up like London. That's what I'm saying. I've seen it. So, you've got to also remember that people who cause these problems are a very small percentage of the population. Most of them, 99% or more, are in bed not doing any harm. It's only a very small percentage, and some of the things I would do to save money would be I'd actually get rid of the PCSO officers, sorry to be blunt. I'd take that money and have proper policemen on the streets. Because as soon as there's any problem, what a PCSO officer can do is ask to call for a policeman to come down. And I've seen this happen. It's a bit of a mockery. I'd use that money with the police force. Our police force aren't respected. They're spat at. They are often the youth are asking the police to chase them in car chases. Now this is happening on the south coast of England, and I don't see why Eastbourne should be any different to the south coast of England. So we need to look after the police a bit more, a bit like we did in the olden days, and I think that's probably all we need to say on the subject.
Thank you. Ian Darwat, you've been waiting very patiently. Please tell us your view.
Yeah, I think there is an awful lot of consensus amongst us all here. But one of the things that we feel is that even if you put more police out, and the police do catch and stop a lot of this criminality, the courts are then letting them down. Look at what's happening to people who are drug dealers, shoplifters. It's often very little more than a rap over the knuckles. They don't do anything for a couple of weeks, and they do it again and get another rap over the knuckles. Unfortunately, today, I believe that the youth have lost all respect for the law, for adults, and that is creating the problem in the town centre. I often go up to London for meetings. I come back, arrive in Eastbourne at 11:30, 12:30 at night, and I actually feel afraid to walk along to where I might have parked my car a mile away. So I catch a taxi from right outside the station. That is appalling that I should feel afraid to do it. So, it is not just police, it's actually punishing the criminals once they've been caught. Thank you.
I'll ask Susan Binger, who asked the question, to come back in a second. But just a reminder, you can see her up there on the big screen. If you want to join the debate online, you can do so. Mention @EB Chamber, and we're using a hashtag EB Chamber Hustings, or hashtag Democracy in Eastbourne, if you do want to join in the debate online. But Susan Binger, you asked the question. Do you want to come back on anything that you've heard from the candidates?
Yes, I'm an educator.
Just wait for the microphone, and we can all hear you.
I'm an educator, so I was very pleased that some of the candidates focused on youth and working at the beginning of the story and not the end of the story. I see no point at all in producing remarks about what's going to be done once the criminal behaviour has blossomed and become become real. You need to begin at the beginning of the story. So I was quite pleased to hear that some of the candidates actually talked about that.
I think there was someone there who wanted to ask a question, but they're not there now. So in that case, we will move on to our second question of this evening, which comes from Richard Garland. And for those of you who don't know, Richard is the immediate past president of the Chamber of Commerce and is now chair of the Eastbourne Town Board. If we could just get the microphone to you, Richard, if you'd like to ask your question of the candidates, please.
Thank you. My question, if you are elected but are not the party in power, how will you ensure that Eastbourne gets its share of support and funding? So, for example, will the recently awarded town fund still come to Eastbourne, even if you are not the party in power?
Thank you very much. So just as a reminder, in the budget in March this year, the Chancellor announced that there would be a series of towns, including Eastbourne, would receive up to £20 million of funding and support over 10 years to invest in communities and regeneration. And Richard has been appointed as the chair of that town board. But the question is, if you are elected but are not the party in power, how will you ensure that Eastbourne gets its share of support and funding? For example, will the recently awarded town fund still come to Eastbourne if your party is not in power? Josh Belbrindi, would you like to take that one first?
Well, I think we'll all be lobbying Paul to help us out there.
Well, we don't know who's going to be in government, so let's just say you'll be lobbying whoever the government is on Friday morning.
Quite. So I think what's critical to remember is that the role of a Member of Parliament locally is to be a local champion for our town, regardless of the colour of the government. Now, as far as I'm concerned, government has made a commitment to the town, and that commitment should be seen through. Plans have already been made. Folks are already gathering on the Towns Fund board that Richard chairs in order to look at what the investment plan is, what the priorities are. And so my number one act, if you like, on election would be to write to the government ministers responsible, not just for this funding, but funding of all sorts, to say, look, you've made these commitments before the election, one colour government, we expect those to be seen through. But also I think that what is critical to remember is that there are ways of being able to secure support for the town that don't necessarily involve being the same colour as the government. So on a local level, I've lobbied a lot for cost of living funding, say, that's come from our local authority. There are also other bodies that are responsible for making big decisions about our town that aren't any political colour at all. Take our hospital trust. And in fact, when I found out that there were some concerns around paediatric services, I went to the CEO of the Hospital Trust. I said that I wasn't happy with what I had heard, and as a result of standing up for our town, there are a number of changes that they made to the way that they were reconfiguring paediatric services in light of those interventions, made not just by me, but by many across our town. So what I would say to you, Richard, is yes, I think you could probably rely on anybody on this panel because we all care about our town to hold the government to account. But there are other institutions we must hold to account too. I'm very proud
Caroline Ansell, would you like to go next? I should have said you've got 2 minutes for this question.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that's a super important question that goes way beyond the Towns Fund. And I can only say how hard I worked for Eastbourne's place in that town's funding. And what underpinned my success was access to ministers. And so I lobbied ministers, I lobbied the Chancellor, I was relentless. But more than that, I was connected. And to Josh's point around pivoting to Paul, that is the harsh reality, that is the choice that Eastbourne faces. On the 5th of July, I'm not presupposing the results of the election, but short of something cataclysmic, on the 5th of July we will have either a Labour government or a Conservative government. The Conservative government has pursued all these years a really strong focus on coastal communities, and that's where the Coastal Community Fund came in, That was what regenerated and rebuilt and restored the Winter Gardens, for example. The Labour government, I fear, does not have the same heart for seaside towns in the south, such as ours. In fact, in the manifesto, the Labour manifesto, it already highlights the A27 and funding there that will be axed in the event of a Labour government. So my earnest plea to the good people of Eastbourne is to stare down that reality, a Labour government or a Conservative government, because that is the choice. And there isn't a scenario in which a Liberal Democrat government will come into being, or a Liberal Democrat MP have that influence and have that voice. And that is simply the reality. The Towns Fund has been committed. It's really important money, not least the 20 million, but the seed funding it will provide, the attraction of private investment that it can give, and the ability for local people to really drive that spend means that money could be transformational.
You say we still do not know the outcome of the election, whatever you may say. Now, you used the phrase the Labour government. Was that a slip of the tongue, or were you actually saying that there will be the Labour
Certainly
government?
not.
No. Okay, but are you saying that the money that you lobbied for and got, the only guaranteed way it will come to Eastbourne is if you are re-elected and the Conservatives are re-elected? Because the others have said they would lobby for it, they would ask for it, and ask whatever government is in power to commit to that.
Well, I can certainly row in behind committing, and not just the £20 million. There is much more that sits behind that 20 million.
Yeah, I'm just asking about the guarantee that it will come, so that Richard knows he has a secure future.
Under a Conservative government, I can guarantee it. That's as far as I could go. Under any other government, I will fight, as I have done every one of these last years, through COVID and beyond, to secure for Eastbourne record-breaking investment. That's who I am, that's who I'll be.
Okay, thank you. Let's now ask the Labour candidate, then. Paul Richards, what would you say to this question?
If you look at all the available evidence and data of opinion polling, but also the data coming in on the doorstep, there's going to be a slew of Sussex seaside Labour MPs on Friday the 5th. There's going to be MPs in Worthing, Shore and Brighton. So the argument was that the Labour Party doesn't believe in the seaside.
No, the question is about commitment to support and funding for Eastbourne.
Well, that's an important point of context. On the Towns Fund, I think it's an absolute corrupt scheme, and the Select Committee made that very clear, that there was a correlation between MPs of a certain stripe and where the money went. And that's no basis to allocate public funds. The way you allocate public funds is based on need. And when I was in government, we did Sure Starts, we did the Social Exclusion Unit and various other schemes we did for communities based on community need. Where there was poverty, where you needed people to be lifted up and given a fair go. And so it shouldn't be based on the colour of the MP, the rosette they wear. It should be based on a national view of how you get the economy moving, how you help people who deserve it, where you need to put the money in to help people. That's what it should be. So I think scrapping the Towns Fund would be one of the first things we do. It's like I say, the Select Committee itself said, it's not me. It's the way you get money in is by having a government that is committed to levelling up everywhere, regardless of who the MP is.
Thank you for that. I'll ask Mr Ashdown to go next. And I would just say I'm very happy to spend the next 2 hours discussing the pros and cons of multi-level regression and post-stratification polling. But I think it's only going to be you and I still left here at the end of the evening. So
I'll be here.
You're still here as well. Thank you very much. Well, the three of us can discuss that. But let's stick to the questions that the members of the chamber and residents have asked, and not your theories about what is going to happen on Friday, because we haven't got long to wait. And if you just wait until Friday morning, you'll find out what the result is. So let's stick to this question from Richard Garland about the Town Fund. Mark Ashdown.
Well, hopefully that's the position I'm going to find myself in, elected, but our party won't be in power. We have a growing dependency on government. This has only come about after the Second World War. It's quite natural to most people now. The government will sort it out. It's called big government. Tax the people, the government sort it out. It's all very socialist. The Russians tried it. Central control. I don't think it's a very good idea. Now, this too 10 million over 10 years, let's have a look at that, that's 2 million a year. That's not an awful lot of money. I'd like to have it in my back pocket, but I think people across the country need to start thinking about how they can raise money themselves. You can't be dependent on other people all the time if you're begging bowl out to government and the like, because you can take your destiny into your own hand, and we could raise that in this town. £2 million. The money is borrowed money. It's not a sovereign wealth fund from Norway that's been set aside and it's cash in the bank. This money that is being used is borrowed money. It's part of the 2.85 trillion, and that means 2.85 thousand billion that we are in debt to. And every time we dip into this a little bit more, we pay more interest. We're paying £80 billion a year in interest payments only, and that is part of the problem. This continual government raising money from borrowing or printing it and spending it across the country. This needs to be reversed. We need to go back to basics, as we did before the Second World War. What else did I say? We need to put Eastbourne on the map. We've heard this all before. You've had Lib Dem Conservative, Lib Dem Conservative, Lib Dem Conservative. And now I think, as Einstein said, doing the same thing and expecting a different result is madness. So I'm going to say, don't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, because you've heard it all before, and if you're not careful, you're going to hear it all again.
Okay, before. Thank you. Thank you very much. Ian Garbuck from UKIP. Up to 20 million over 10 years in the town fund.
Yes, you know, we have heard that Labour are saying they're going to be in power, Tories are saying they're going to be in power. We could actually end up like we did in 2010 and have a coalition, but it could be a coalition with 4 ways at it. Who knows? My colleague for Reform is quite right. All this money that is going to seaside communities is borrowed money, and we need to get back to basics. I was brought up to believe that you only could spend what you earned, that everything you wanted in life you had to work for. But unfortunately today, I see too many people, too many organisations think that they can put their hand out and somebody will put the money in it. You've only got to watch television, and you know there are hundreds of worthwhile charities putting their begging bowls out. But a lot of that responsibility should lie with the government, who unfortunately we've had governments for the last 20, 25 years who've wasted as much as they spent. And we need to get back to reality and only spending and living within our means.
Thank you. And finally on this one, Mr Munson, just a reminder, the question is, how will you ensure that Eastbourne gets its share of support and funding? Will the recently awarded town fund still come to Eastbourne, even if your party is not in power?
Well, you heard it. You heard it said that if you vote for me, the town will get this money. That doesn't sound like the kind of politics that we should have in this country. And there's no point in having a hospital, a new hospital here, paid for with that kind of money, when the government that might provide this isn't willing to invest in the health services and social care that run it. Without nurses, what's the point of having a building? We need to remove private companies from the NHS, taking the taxes, taking the profits out of your NHS. This is your money that they're taking and making profits from. And we need to fix social care. You asked me what me and my party would do? Well, I do have a bit more of a crystal ball, and I look at the multi-level regression polls, and we're not going to be in power, and I'm not going to be the MP here, but what all of you can do is every Green MP out there will be using the weight of your votes throughout the country to push the Green policies. And it's the same here. We have an opportunity to vote, it's a hard-won vote. If you cast it for the policies that you want, then our MP, whoever they are, when they get elected, will take note of the kind of policies that they want, that you want in our town, and will represent those because they are duty-bound to represent the whole of Eastbourne. Thank you.
Let's go back to Richard Garland. How's your job security looking now?
Pretty good, I think. We're all volunteers on board, so that's very important. But,
Have you got a microphone? Or... Yeah, let's just get your microphone so we can all hear what you have to say.
Thank you. Well, we're all volunteers on the board. We will be inviting the MP to join the board in a week's time, or less than a week's time. So we look forward to either a long and fruitful relationship or a very quick conversation.
Okay, that's great. Lorraine, on the end, you had a question on the crime question, but when we finished that, you weren't in the room. Did you want to say something now, just to go back briefly on the issue of crime that we were talking about before?
It was just really to say that everybody's got a lot of hopes and dreams, but they don't actually back it up with how they're going to fund it.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure the candidates will bear that in mind as we get further into the debate to specify not just what you're going to do, but how you're going to pay for it. We'll move on then to another question, which we had a lot of questions on this particular subject because it is one that does affect lots of people in Eastbourne. It's come from Corinne Morrison, who can't actually be here, so I will read out the question on her behalf. She says, as a sea swimmer, I am concerned about the water quality in Eastbourne. Southern Water has put profit above services and failed to invest, which has resulted in sewage spillages in our seas. The system is under added pressure from new households and climate change. What will you do to change the system to prioritise human health and nature? Mike Munson, why don't you take that one first?
Thank you. Water privatisation has been an unmitigated disaster. It is a public utility monopoly which needs to be back in public hands. Nobody should be profiting from a public utility. They have you over a barrel, and they use that. Southern Water recently applied to Ofwat for an increase in your bills by 72%. And no amount of tinkering with the model, changing the regulator, etc., is ever going to work. Nobody's ever been prosecuted as a CEO from any of these big companies. It didn't happen with the banks, and it's not going to happen with water. Greens will set aside 30% of our land and seas by 2030, in which nature will receive the highest priority and protection. Only 5% of our land is currently protected in this way. Greens will push to restore rivers and take a nature-based solutions approach to preventing of flooding and storm overflows. We will work with farmers to come up with solutions that prevent agricultural runoff, which is also another massive pollutant of our natural environment. It is not just sewage, but the privatisation of the water companies has seen private companies invest without any risk and take your profits. It needs to stop. We will have a Clean Air Act, and we will protect green belt, natural landscapes and SSSIs, so vital to Eastbourne.
Josh Beverley.
Well, I think the way in which water companies across our country are polluting our seas, rivers, waterways, lakes is a total disgrace, and the scandal needs to end. Now, the key thing that we need to do is transform what has become a water industry into a service that serves us as bill payers and as members of the public, but critically a service that serves the environment too. So what do we need to do? Well, first of all, we need to ban bonuses for polluting water company executives who are making a lot of cash out of polluting our sea. Secondly, we need to impose a sewage tax on their profits to force them to pay for the damage that they are causing to our environment. Thirdly, we need to strengthen Ofwat, one of the regulators, to give them more powers to prosecute individual water companies that are damaging our environment in this way. And fourthly, we need to restructure these companies at their source. They've done it in the US, we can do it here, reform them into what are described as public benefit companies. This would force them not only to look out for their shareholders, but also to put the environment first. Until we tackle this head on, rather than sweep it under the carpet and not talk about it because it might damage tourism or whatever it might be, we must tackle it head on, otherwise the water companies will continue to make money out of us and out of polluting our environment.
I just want to come back on one point on what you said, but before that, we ought to make clear, because Southern Water aren't here to defend themselves, that their chief executive and their chief financial officer both declined a bonus for the year to March, and the company has not paid out any dividends to its external shareholders since 2017, although the previous chief executive did get a bonus and a further bonus for securing an investment from the Investment Bank of Australia, which is now the majority shareholder in Southern Water. But we ought to just make that clear. One thing you've said in your leaflets, Mr. Beverley, is that you've taken to the streets to hold Southern Water to account. Now, bearing in mind they have headquarters over in West Worthing, as I've said, their majority shareholder is based in Australia. How have you actually held Southern Water to account, and why should they take any notice of what you've had to say?
So it's not just about what I've had to say, it's about what swimmers and other stakeholders, as far as our sea is concerned, have had to say. We've got great swimming groups like the Silver Dippers, like the Eastbourne Sea Swimmers, who have organised marches that have been broadcast on national television, on regional television, and Southern Water have been invited. And these organisations are taking a stand. Rather than complaining, they are saying, no, enough is enough. But so I've joined them in that effort. I've shown solidarity with what they're campaigning for, in order to send a message to Southern Water that what they're doing to our beaches...
But sending a message is not quite as holding them to account. They have shareholders. They aren't... We'll come back to that just in a second. It's just this point about, you deliberately said you have held them to account, and I just wondered how, as Mr. Munson pointed out, they are a private company, how you, as a prospective candidate, have actually held Southern Water to account.
Well, holding a company or any other body to account involves identifying what its record is in terms of the dumps that it's implemented, in terms of the cash that it's making, and putting that out into the public so that members of the public have the information that they need to know as ratepayers, but also as citizens, to be able to take a stand. Also holding to account as a political party involves putting forward legislation in order to hold these companies to account via the law. So
that's only if your party is in government. Sorry.
No, it's not actually. It's
well,
not.
all right, you can begin. Yes, MPs can begin.
The Democrat MPs have put forward legislation in Parliament, for example, to create a compensation scheme for swimmers who have got ill because of swimming in the water. There are so many people that before they go and swim, they check multiple apps, whether it's Beach Boy or Surfers Against Sewage, and they avoid swimming at those times. It never used to be the case. We should be able to swim.
Okay, that's fine. Well, I know there's a lot of people that want to get in. I want to ask the other candidates, is this an urgent point, Mr. Monson?
This is directly relating to holding the Southern Water to account.
Okay, very briefly,
I and other members of the Green Party submitted a letter publicly at an eco fair to Southern Water's CEO, containing 20 questions holding him to account. He has written back and responded. That is an example of holding the CEO of Southern Water to account.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, Caroline Ansell, can you now answer the question about Green Monson, which was about what will you do to change the system to prioritise human health and nature?
Thank you for that. And our world-leading Environment Act does exactly that, spelling out a 25-year programme that will see restoration of nature and many of the standards and requirements that we want to see in the water industry. So there is tough new legislation already in place. There is stringent standards now already in place. There are tough new requirements of water company bosses to make. There have been criminal prosecutions. Paul, you highlighted at the start a changing culture with Southern Water around dividends or around some of those employment practices. But would you be shocked, yes you would, if I told you today that our water quality is good? Our water quality is good. What is so toxic is some of the messaging that has come for political gain, including our own Liberal Democrat-run council, that declared Eastbourne's bathing waters a tsunami of human waste. And my heart sinks, Josh, to hear you talking about going on national TV to say as much. We are a tourist town. We rely on our visitors to underpin our local economy. And people who live in Eastbourne love the water. So it's really important that they have accurate, honest and reliable information about water quality. The only raw sewage that has been pumped out came from a misconnection. The Environment Agency, not my own personal viewpoint on this, and that misconnection was a seafront building, which was at the time the Liberal Democrat run building control, and that is the reality. Southern Water has done good work on misconnections across the town, and that's why our water quality has recovered. I've met with the Chief Executive, I've met with him here at the Waste Treatment Works, I've met with him in Westminster also. There's good work, and there's a good message. Our water quality is good, and it's steadily improving because of the legislation, and because of the new standards that are required.
Okay. The water quality is rated as good. Could you tell us what the rating was the year before that?
Not as good, because of the misconnections. So that misconnection, the most significant one found, as I said, was a seafront building owned by the Liberal Democrat Council. Misconnections was at the heart of the water quality drop, but I want not just good, I want excellent. And that's why I'm working on surface water with Southern Water, who are investing in a whole rollout of smart water butts so we can capture that excess rainwater, which is what causes the overflow. I'm very passionate about water. I'd love to tell everybody about my trip to the waste treatment works, a particular highlight.
Okay, I'm sure you can. It is an important subject, but you can see that the water quality was good, it went down to satisfactory, and it's now gone back up to good. Yeah, okay. Now that's one story that was published a year ago in one website.
By the Environment Agency.
And I know you've been criticised in the Lib Dem Council, but it does go back to the point just after the Conservatives had lost control of Eastbourne Borough Council back in 2007. And in that time, you were a councillor and you were deputy opposition leader of...
At what time was that?
No, you're talking about the things that have gone back to 2007.
No, that's way before my time. But I'd love to argue the toss on building control. But the truth still stands. And the sad thing is, we should all be working together. I don't really want to point scores, but it is really important to highlight what's actually true and right and the honest presentation of the issue. Because it is really important to Eastbourne.
Okay, I think
Hugely
you've
important.
had to say, we will bring in the audience in a minute, but Paul Richards, I wanted to bring you in. I think I'm right that you were a special advisor to the Shadow Secretary of State for Environmental Protection. So can you tell us what Labour has been doing, either in government or since, to protect our waters, as the questioner asked?
We've had an invisible hospital, invisible coppers, and now clean water, apparently. I mean, honestly, you're right. I was there in Parliament just after privatisation went through, and all of the warnings we issued then in the early 90s about what would end up have largely come true. Like Karine, I'm a very keen sea swimmer. I was in on Saturday morning, and you do think twice. You do worry about your health. You do look around you as you're swimming and just see what's out there. And yes, it was fine, but it's not always, and there have been discharges along the south coast. The thing about the sea is it doesn't stop at the constituency boundary, does it? It is something that we all enjoy together. I'm pleased I've been endorsed by Fergal Sharkey, the water campaigner, and he's endorsed my candidature for my campaign on sewage. And I think the answer is a much tougher regime on southern water. Why they should be getting any kind of credit for not taking a bonus? I mean, what we do, well done. I mean, that's ridiculous. And if they had taken a bonus, it would have been an absolute scandal. Because it should be related in some way to benefits to the community, shouldn't it? So we can fine them, we can introduce tougher regulation, we can beef up Ofwat, we can stop them from taking bonuses when they fail, and most importantly, when they break the law, they should be put into trial and they should be put into the dock and be held to account through the legal system. And that's the way you get a change of behaviour, and that's the way you clean your water.
Thank you. Mr. Carlisle.
Yes, I mean, who actually really knows what water quality truly is? You've got the tourists saying one thing, you've got the Lib Dem saying another. And then you've got Swimmers Against Sewage who were campaigning here the other Saturday. Why would they be here if they felt that the water quality was excellent? I think one of the things that needs to be done as a matter of urgency is that Ofwat needs to have teeth. At the moment, they dish out rather minute fines that really are meaningless to a company turning over the sort of amount of money that they are. It's mere pennies, mere copper. And as the colleague on my left said, Whoopi, the chief executive, didn't take a bonus. But with the salary that he is on, he doesn't need a bonus to live. He's probably earning twice what anybody in this room is. So we need to actually give it as a service, and we need to actually give Ofwat teeth.
Okay, thank you. And just for the record, Southern Water was fined a record £90 million back in July 2021 after pleading guilty to 6,971 unpermitted sewage discharges along rivers and coastal waters covering Kent, Hampshire and Sussex. And that was the largest case ever brought by the Environment Agency. And that £90 million had to be paid from the £138 million operating profit that Southern Water made that year. So the company has been fined for its actions. And I would just say...
How much was that profit again? It was paid out?
It should have been 100%.
It was £138 million they made operating profit that year, and they were fined £90 million. Okay.
It should have been 100%.
Okay, that's not for us. And just to say, there is monitoring of the water quality. The Environment Agency does it, and people have mentioned apps like Beach Boy and Swimfo, which do provide indication of the quality of the water that there is. But I'm aware, Mr. Ashdown, you've been waiting very patiently, so please tell us your view on sea swimming and how we can do more to improve human health and nature.
This is actually a very simple answer to this question. The problem in the first place was bad legislation. I have a friend who's very high up in Thames Water. Their hands were tied from day one. Now, when the bad legislation came in over the first few years, no one really noticed it. Then people started looking for loopholes. And human beings in a private company will try and make as much money as they can from those loopholes. So the original idea to privatise it is because we've already had it nationalised, and the problem with nationalised companies, generally speaking, is they're not as efficient. And it's not their fault, it's because the people get a salary at the end of the month, no matter what they do or don't do, and there's no sort of incentive for these people. So the idea was to privatise it. The legislation was bad, and what we would do as reform, and I'm the sort of person who likes to try something out. We tried the privatisation and we tried the nationalisation, and we would say we go 50-50. Give that a try and see what happens, and that's the only way you're going to find out. But what I've also noticed is on all the authorities, statutory authorities that have been privatised, the legislation needs to be updated. It was done a long time ago, and someone needs, in the government or the civil service, to re-look at it once a year and say, what's happened? Is it working? Because the Act of Parliament goes through and then it'll sit there for donkey's years, and this is where you get the problems sneaking in. Of what, if you have the rules in place, then you can control what's happening. But if the rules aren't in place in the first place, then you can't do that. There is no consequences to the actions. That's the problem. And the solution, I think, is to revisit legislation. It makes not a blind bit of difference who makes this glass of water. Whether it's private at the end of the day, or done in the national, as long as it's done in national interest and the rules are obeyed.
Okay, thank you. The original legislation, I think you referred to as the 1989 Water Act, but there are votes in Parliament on a regular basis on the regulations around that. So the issue is revisited on a fairly regular basis by politicians. I want to ask the audience, because obviously Corinne is not here to ask the question, but before I do that, I just want to go down the panel very, very briefly. Mrs. Ansell, you're on record as saying the sea waters are safe and you would happily swim in the sea of Eastbourne. Do you stand by that?
I do stand by that because the water quality is good. But as you have referenced earlier, there are a number of acts that can advise whether there has been a discharge, but those acts need to be far, far more sophisticated going forward. Because what it doesn't tell you is the nature of that outlet. And what is actually really important is not the legislation, it's the fact that we've got a Victorian infrastructure here with combined sewer, so it's rainwater and wastewater. And if you want to stop storm overflows tonight, the next time it rains, what you flush is coming back at you, which is why we've got a billion pound programme coming forward.
You still say it's safe to swim in the sea, and you'll happily do so?
Yes.
Okay, let's just go down the line, ask Paul the same question. Is it safe to swim in the sea, and would you happily do so?
I don't know if it's safe or not, but I wouldn't want to swim in it because it's too cold anyway.
I'm a keen paddleboarder. I only take my paddleboard out when I've checked the apps, and it's absolutely clear.
Mr. Carlisle?
Only when we haven't had a dose of heavy rain.
At 6:30 on Saturday morning, I was in the sea, but you do think twice, and you do check the app, and you do worry about the surge.
31% of your bills pays for the debt that has been wrapped up
Okay,
by
is it
this,
safe?
I'm going to answer the question.
Yeah,
By these companies in trying to keep the water clean in our seas. It isn't.
Okay. And the other question, as you may be aware, that our near neighbours Hastings Borough Council have arranged a public meeting with Southern Water so that residents can put their questions directly to Southern Water. Would you all now pledge that if you are elected on Thursday evening, you will invite the Chief Executive of Southern Water to a public meeting in Eastbourne so that residents, sea swimmers and others can put their questions directly to Southern Water? Yes? Is that a yes?
Yes, I already have. And in fact, the turnaround director came down to Eastbourne and he went out swimming with the swimmers.
The Chief Executive to a public meeting?
100% yes.
Okay. Mr. Ashdown?
No problem.
Yes.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yes, and I'll put them in front of the Senate committee as well, and get the minister down in flames about it.
Okay.
That was already one of our questions, and the 20 questions we asked the CEO.
Okay, thank you. I think we've finally found one subject on which all 6 candidates can agree. Let's just throw it open now to the audience if people do have a question. I can see Will Callahan there. If we can get a microphone to Will, and then we'll come here and then over there. Just very briefly, we don't want a statement because we've
It's not a statement, but it's just something one of the panelists said about public versus private. It's like there's an automatic assumption that the private is good and public is bad. I'd just invite everybody to love their public servants. They're really hard-working. They work efficiently. I'm not going to make any party political points because I can't. But go and look at We Own It and just look at the record of privatisation in this country.
Okay, thank you.
I'm really only here as a note taker, but I promise this is the only thing I'll say. The person who sent the question in included 2 words which the panel unanimously have either overlooked or sidestepped, and those 2 words are climate change.
Yeah, we did have a lot of questions about climate change and sea defences, but we wanted to focus. The climate change was one of the causes of water. Yes, we've got a question over there as well. And then we'll take it over there.
Yes, I'm a sea swimmer all year round. I recently celebrated my 70th birthday. So for me to think about waiting 25 years before it's actually clean enough to swim in, I'll be obviously 95. And if I'm spared, I will still be swimming, but it seems a long time to wait.
Okay, thank you. And then we also have a question down here, Russell.
Is there going to be a possible way where the profits can be linked to the performances of the Southern Water Company?
Okay, that's really a question for Southern Water, because they are a private company, unless anyone wants to say that they would force the companies to link their profits to performance.
Yes. If they are polluting water companies, then bonuses should go, and we should be taxing their profits in order to make them pay for the damage that they're doing. So yes, there should be performance.
Okay, thanks very much indeed.
I wouldn't trust the figures on I wouldn't trust the figures on performance because they would be produced by the water companies themselves.
Well, some of the figures are produced by the Environment Agency, which is independent, which is carried out.
Revolving door between Ofwat and the companies. They move from the companies to Ofwat and from Ofwat onto the boards of the water companies. So good luck with getting any independent figures on their performance.
Okay, yeah, that is the case in some instances. But I think we've dealt with that one fairly comprehensively. We all look forward to the public meeting to be held here in Eastbourne fairly soon after the election of the Chief Executive of Southern Water. We're now going to move to a shorter round where we invited each of the candidates, if they wish to do so, to ask one question of one of the other candidates, who will have 1 minute in which to answer that. So, Mark Ashdown from Reform, you have a question, so would you please tell us to whom you are asking your question and what the question is, and then whoever it is, you will have 1 minute in which to give a succinct answer.
My question is to my friend Josh, my new friend Josh. I have a copy of the Lib Dem manifesto, sorry, I had a Joe Biden moment for a minute. In front of me. And the question, which was scrutinised by the people here, was and is, how many houses would you build in the first year of office to accommodate the immigration of the LGBT plus, let me start the queue, people and others fearing prosecution around the world, as mentioned in your manifesto plans? Where will these houses be built, and how much of the taxpayers' money are you going to spend on this?
Okay, it's page 91, if you wish to refresh your memory.
Yeah, so there's 2 parts to the question. One is house building, and one is on immigration. We, as a country, I think, have a proud record of welcoming those who are facing discrimination and who are facing abuses of their human rights, and welcoming them into this country as asylum seekers and as refugees. We've done so for many, many years, and that tradition should continue. Should any tragedy befall our country, or anybody in our country, one day subject to similar things, I would hope that the rest of the world would accommodate us and protect our human rights in the way that I think that we should be doing. When it comes to the question of housing, there are lots of drivers of the housing crisis. One of the key drivers is that we are not building enough. So Liberal Democrats have committed to overseeing the building of 380,000 homes every single year, 150,000 of which would be social homes. And it's a fully costed manifesto.
I was about to say, there was the point that our audience member made about how you're going to pay for that.
Yeah, it's a fully costed manifesto.
So how
So
are you
if
going to pay for it?
Mark opens up the manifesto towards the end, he'll be able to see the costing document and how much that's going to cost.
All the costings are rubbish. It's cloud, if you believe that, you're in cloud cooking.
That's not what
Rubbish. They've never carried out these. It's just rubbish. All of them. I don't know why they produce them. They produce them because the public expects it.
Can I ask a question?
On this, I know you had a question that you wanted to ask one of the other candidates.
Well, I might change it then.
Okay, yes.
That has to go through scrutinisation.
As long as
And they're going to take the LGBT bit out. They don't care about the Q people that are curious. Well, maybe I'm curious. Okay? And you didn't answer the question. I asked how many houses, how much is it going to cost, and where are you going to put them? That's 3 simple questions.
Okay. Well, you can leave that and discuss it afterwards. So no, you did have a question that you had submitted. I would ask you to stick to that question that you were going to ask. So again, tell us which other candidate and what is the one question you want to ask them.
So my question is to Mike, my friend Mike. And Mike, at the last Hustings, and again at this one, you've been very open and honest about the pressure that you want to put on to members of Parliament, whatever political party they might be from, when it comes to climate action. And it would be great to hear from you about what practical action do you think that Eastbourne's Member of Parliament should take to contribute towards resolving the climate emergency? And I ask that in good faith, not as a gotcha question.
I would change the Lib Dem manifesto.
I think we might need to join the party first.
I think what Josh could do is doing exactly what he recommended that Mark do, which is to read his manifesto. The Green Manifesto has been ranked the highest by Greenpeace, by Friends of the Earth, by Greenpeace, by Friends of the Earth, by Climate Vote, to be I think it's half as much again as powerful at tackling the energy crisis, the climate crisis, the nature crisis, and the environment crisis, in 2 different sections. And so that's what I would do, because actually there isn't enough time here to actually go through all the things that the Lib Dems need to know about the climate. They need to stop talking about the other parties, and they need to talk about the climate and the environment.
Can I ask you a point of correction? Vote Climate sent out an email a couple of days ago saying Vote Climate is recommending everyone in the Eastbourne constituency to vote Lib Dem. So the comment that you just made now was not correct.
No, it is true, because actually, yes, they recommended people vote Lib Dem because the message has been going out that it's us or them. It's about tactical voting. Vote Climate issued a massive analysis that showed that the Green Party's policies would keep us under 1.5 degrees of global warming for far longer than the Liberal Democrat one would. But as I said before, we won't get into power. And actually, Josh is just asking, what can they do when they get into power? And I would say, follow the Green Party manifesto.
Okay, that's fine. We'll leave it there. You can continue the discussion. discussion afterwards, or even after Thursday evening, when we will know the result and we can do that. And don't forget, people can join the debate online at EB Chamber, hashtag EB Chamber Hustings, hashtag democracy in Eastbourne. But I'm going to move on to the next audience question now, and this one comes from Adam Callahan. So, Adam, could you ask your question, please, of Anna?
I'm 17 and I'm about to finish up my first year of A-levels. What would you do to ensure a variety of skilled, well-paid jobs locally so I don't have to move away when I finish?
Thank you, Adam. And I would say we've also had a lot of questions about jobs. We've also had questions from people who are worried about jobs for the over 50s and reskilling, as well as jobs for young people. Let's start with you, Caroline Anson.
Thank you. And I don't know if you'll be following in family footsteps and whether your talents lie in the digital and creative. But that is one of the really important sectors that we need to see developed in Eastbourne. We've traditionally had an economy that's rested on our visitor economy for all good reasons, the beauty of the dam and the sea and all the pleasure in sea bathing to recognise that. But the digital and creative is a way in which we can provide those skilled jobs, that connection to all things global. So I really pay a tribute to DigiFest, a new innovative festival, if you like, and celebration of all the digital businesses that we have in the town. The Conservative Party has brought forward a whole raft of tax incentives and tax breaks to try and pump prime this particular sector. And with that, all things media and film also, because Britain has an incredible tradition of leading in this particular field. And Eastbourne could be so well placed to capture that. Not just as the backdrop to sort of big movie franchises like Harry Potter, because of the beauty of our environment, but because of new businesses such as Brackets, where they are developing multi and sort of mixed reality. There's a whole frontier out there, and there are some seriously skilled people in town bringing their businesses to our town. So that is something that I'm really keen to row in behind, so that this youngest generation has every opportunity at home and to stay at home and to be part of a really bright Eastbourne future. One other area that I'm developing, helping to develop, is around green jobs, and that's why the new hub, led by East Sussex College, and developing all those skills around renewables, that is incredibly important for us to capture too.
Okay, well, hang on time. Josh Beverini, the same question. What are you going to say to Adam about ensuring a variety of skilled, well-paid jobs locally, so he doesn't have to move away when he finishes his courses?
Absolutely. I'm passionate about this particular topic. It wasn't long ago that I was at college and thinking about university and then thinking about where would best honour some of the skills that I had that I wanted to contribute. I do think that digital, as Caroline said, is a fantastic opportunity for our town. And I think there are lots of ways that we could harness some of our traditional elements of the economy, redouble it with digital in order to break some new ground. So let's take tourism. We are a proud tourist town. Nearly 1 in 3 jobs are associated with tourism. I think there's really interesting opportunities at the intersection of tourism and digital. There's no reason, for example, in light of our tourism, hospitality, and some of the great digital innovation that we've got here, for why the next Booking.com or Airbnb couldn't come from Eastbourne. And I think it's critical that the Member of Parliament tries to bring those investors, tries to bring those entrepreneurs to Eastbourne, so build the capacity of those entrepreneurs in order to do that. Another example is when it comes to care. We have a big care sector in Eastbourne, and proudly so. And you see that there are innovations in care, particularly when it comes to digital and AI, popping up all across the world. Well, again, there's no reason why Eastbourne could not be a hotbed for digital innovation when it comes to social care. Take another element of our economy, or an asset of ours, sun. We are the sunniest town in the UK officially, have been since 1911. We've got loads of rooftop space, rooftop real estate. There's already stuff being done to harness that, but we can go even further. So we have the ingredients of those jobs for the future right here in Eastbourne. We need to make sure that our Member of Parliament is serving as an ambassador and a magnet for that investment and those entrepreneurial skills in order to make it.
Thank you. Mark Ashdown, what can you say to Adam?
Well, I don't know. Hello?
Yeah.
Is it working?
It is.
I suppose it is now. I don't know what your particular bent would be, but I would say that what's happened in my lifetime, I've been in the construction industry for most of my life, and I've then also been into renewables, or what I call sustainable energy. And one of the best things you could do, that Tony Blair didn't really understand because he wanted half the population to have a degree. And by the way, if you want a degree, you can go to Liverpool now and get a degree in the Beatles. So I don't really value degrees much now, and nor do the bulk population of employees anyway. But what we need is apprenticeships. I've been 40 years in the construction industry. There are not enough scaffolders, tilers, ground workers, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, heating engineers, of any type, even decoration. Now, the story is that we're going to build millions of houses over the next 5 years, and so you'll never be out of a job in this town or anywhere else if you did one of those trades, if you didn't think it was beneath you. And a lot of the problems is that, it is a sort of inverse snobbery. Out of those trades, you want to be an electrician, in my opinion, because with all of the things that Josh has mentioned, these solar farms, they all need electricians to connect this up. You also need ground workers. So I would get a trade, and you'll never be out of work.
Thank you. Paul Richards, what are you going to do to help Adam?
Well, Adam, first of all, good luck with the. Are you waiting for results? Have you done your A-levels? Are you waiting for results?
I've done a couple of mocks.
Yeah, excellent. Good luck. Of course, if Rishi wins on Thursday, you'll be doing national service as well. So a good point that Josh made is about the convening role of the Member of Parliament. I think there is something around having that spark of imagination and drive and sort of entrepreneurialism that can bring employers and investors together. But you also need a national government framework for skills and a skills revolution, really, in this country. And I think it's not unfair to say that we've sort of gone down certain routes in terms of post-16, and we need to maybe rebalance towards skills, particularly green skills, where a lot of the jobs will be. It's not all going to be carbon capture. We're going to need some, people, like you say, building homes that are environmentally friendly, sorting out some of the issues around renewables and so on. And if we're going to power the kind of growth that I've been talking about in this campaign, we want the fastest growth in the G7, that is going to have to happen because we have a skilled workforce, particularly young people, and that must include apprenticeships. And I think we have to reimagine how we view apprenticeships. It shouldn't be a second best option. It should be, as in Germany, a skilled apprentice should be something that is lauded and supported and praised in society, and it would be a really good route for lots of young people. And finally, as the co-op candidate, I'm going to say this, of course, but co-ops have a role there. You can learn a lot of skills inside a cooperative venture, business, a startup. And that's why I'd like to see the takeover of some of the empty buildings around the town and actually turn them over to community use so that young people can learn skills in that way as well. The best way you learn anything is by doing it. And I think we can really shift the ground on that and make a difference.
Well, just reset the clock. Yes. Yep. Okay.
You specifically mentioned high quality jobs. And one of the routes to high quality jobs is to go to university and study for a degree. England is the only place in the country that makes young people pay maintenance grants. And they come out of They come out of university with debts of 80,000, 100,000. It's a massive disincentive, and it's also a mental health strain living under that kind of debt and starting off in a job, trying to buy a house. It's almost an impossibility for young people these days. But the answers to the climate problem are the same as the answers to the economic problem. You've heard people mentioning about green industries. Eastbourne has the lowest, is in the lowest 10% areas of that have green jobs. We have the lowest in the country. We need to invest in retrofitting houses, new green energy. We need to build net zero houses. These are the houses and technologies of the future. And unless we're investing in these industries, and none of the other parties seem to be investing at the same scale that we recommend, then there's nothing, there's no future for youth of Eastbourne, except possibly in the public sector, because, like I said, the Green Party will invest heavily in the health of our country and the health of our economy, and that will have a knock-on effect from better pay and better delivery to the economy in Eastbourne. You can get a job in related industries.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know what you're planning to do, but what I would say is, if you want to go to university, only go if you have a clear path of something worthwhile that you want to study that will give you a job at the end. Unfortunately, Tony Blair started it, and he wanted 50% of the youngsters to go to university, and they study worthless degrees, come out with massive debts that are fit for nothing other than maybe working in a shop or McDonald's. But I would say, do consider an apprenticeship. Do consider an apprenticeship, because there are a lot, as what a colleague from Reform said, there is a huge shortage of people who can build houses, whether that be plumbers, electricians, bricklayers, you name it. We do need those skilled jobs, and they pay a lot better than some of the people who've been to university, and those skills will stay with you for life. Good luck with your A-levels.
Adam, obviously because you're 17 you can't vote in this election, but do you feel that by the time the next election comes around, when you can vote, you will have a high-skilled job that will keep you local, from what you've heard?
I really do hope that I can remain local. I really like this town. I feel it offers a lot. I did have a specific critique. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say it.
Well, not specifically, it's more in general, or from what you've heard, as opposed to getting into another debate with one of the candidates. So just
Yeah,
in general, you feel...
I can keep it general.
Yeah.
Recently, we, as a town, were given 20 million in levelling up to level up the town. And from what we've spent, I haven't seen a lot on digital inclusion, which obviously, as multiple candidates said, was a job that they were looking to expand. So I just want to know, if they did get into government, what would they do to ensure jobs like digital inclusion, which they said was so important, would be delivered?
Okay, I'm sure they'll all look at it, and I think Richard Garland on the town board, digital is particularly one aspect that you're looking at with representatives, as you're aware that the digital economy is a major aspect within Eastbourne. All right? Yeah, it is good. Okay, in that case, we'll move on to our next question. And if anyone ever wonders if we have a doctor in the house, the answer is yes, we do, because I'd now like to call Dr. Sean Brink to ask his question. And Dr. Brink is a GP at the Victoria Medical Centre.
Evening, everyone. Thank you to all the candidates for being available to answer this question. So, as a general practitioner for the last 10 years in Sussex and Eastbourne, and a doctor that's been employed by the NHS locally by the Trust since 2000, I have seen ongoing and persisting reports and feedback from patients about access to primary care services and appointments. I want to know locally what action you would consider taking to retain primary care staff and to make Eastbourne a place where they want to work.
Thank you. The problems of accessing GP appointments have been very well documented in this town, not least at the Victoria Medical Centre. Mark Ashdown, what are you going to do to ensure that Dr Brink and all of us can have primary care staff and that they will be working in Eastbourne so that we can see our GP within a reasonable time?
Well, I don't think Eastbourne is any different to anywhere other hospital in the country, is it particularly? I've heard stories of people leaving to go and work in Australia because they get more money. And we have a lot of people coming in from other countries to work here as sort of satisfied with the money. Personally, I think GPs, I know a few GPs. There are salaries of 150,000 a year, some of them, is that correct?
Well, according to the government, the average salary for a GP is between 70,000 as a starter and 114,000, but that is an average salary, so it is quite possible that some will be on more than that.
Okay, well what I would do is I would get an Excel spreadsheet and I'll list all the public sector jobs that there are in the country. So you've got nurses, you've got police, you've got the prison officers, you've got the whole lot. You've got train drivers. And I would try and get some sort of consensus together as to who is worth what at today's rate and how much that should be. And someone's going to have to answer the question. They can all get together and they knock it on the head and come out with an answer. Now, a nurse is very valuable. I can tell you that from personal experience. You know, they do a great job. Should a nurse be paid more than a police officer that might get stabbed? This going around every year, arguments about how much someone should get paid and they don't think they're getting paid enough so they're going to go on strike is absolutely ridiculous, especially in the public sector. So I would bash that out, and these people need to be paid properly. And it's as simple as that. They need to be funded and paid for properly.
Okay, thank you. And we should just remind people that the junior doctors are still on strike, and they are currently on a 5-day strike, which ends at 7 AM tomorrow morning. In Garbutt, we're asking the question about primary care appointments and making Eastbourne a place where primary care staff want to live and work.
Yeah, it is a national problem, and it does come back to training, both for GPs and nurses. But I was talking to my GP only a month ago, and he said one of the problems is that if he saw a patient, for instance, a few years back, who had excess earwax, he'd syringe their ears, put on the patient's notes, ears syringed, checked, no problems. He said, now, for every patient I see, I have to go through 30 questions that I have to answer. He said, so actually, a 5-minute appointment can actually take me 10 to 15 minutes just doing the paperwork. He said, and this is where there's too much bureaucracy. So, yeah, I think GPs do deserve every penny that they get. I've not had a problem with mine. The only problem I've had is joining the queue to get through reception to make the appointment. But it comes back to training, and the same with nurses. My sister, long retired now, she ended up as a sister, but she actually, when she became an SRN, they spent 3 months on the wards, 3 months at school, 3 months on the ward, 3 months on the school. So it was practical as well as schooling. What's happened today is that they go away to university. Crazy. No practical training, and that's where you learn the real job. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Richards, primary care appointments.
So, when I was a special advisor with the Department of Health, I left in 2009. After 10 years, the rating of satisfaction with the NHS from patients was the highest it's ever been in its history. Today, it's the lowest it's ever been in its history. You have to ask yourself the question, what's gone wrong over that period? Partly the Lansley reforms that the coalition government nodded through, and partly chronic underfunding over a decade. And I think the only way we're going to get back to a situation where the NHS is welcomed and we are proud of it is through a Labour government investing in it. Now, Wes Streeting has said as a priority we're going to end the ATM scramble and put more slots in so people can get appointments. We know that if they don't get an appointment, they're going to the A&E, so it's clogging up A&E systems because they simply can't get the treatment they need in the doctors. So we need more doctors, we need more nurses. But I would also say something else, which is we need to shift towards prevention in our health system. The third leg of the Act in 1946 was actually health centres. It was primary care, acute care and health centres, and that bit never really quite happened. Recently I've lost 10 stone in weight through a combination of diet and exercise, 10 stone, not pounds everybody. If I can do it, anyone can do it, it's doable. But we have to have a national mission around this, of just getting people to take care of themselves, to look after each other, to attend to their own mental health, their well-being, to use walking or cycling, get out of the cars. Jobs that make you ill have to be stopped so people aren't sitting at a desk all day long. There's ways we can save the National Health Service and save all of our health and live longer lives and be healthier for longer if we move to that situation of prevention rather than just waiting to be ill and go to the doctors.
Okay, thank you very much. And just for those who aren't political aficionados, Lansley, which Paul Richard mentioned, refers to Andrew Lansley, who's the former Secretary of State for Health in the Conservative government, and Wes Streeting is the Shadow Health Secretary. Okay, just in case anyone wasn't following the argument. Caroline Anderson.
Thank you, Paul. Well, first I'd just like to pay tribute to GPs right across the town. They are incredibly important to everyone, but they've had very bad press this last time, and they are under serious pressure. And the truth is, they are offering more appointments than ever. Demand is at an all-time high. So one of the really important things that we've brought forward most recently is around that pivot to pharmacies. Pharmacists are hugely well-trained, informed health professionals who can take some of the pressure away from our GP practices. But also, fundamentally for us in Eastbourne and East Sussex, we have a demographic where there is a significant proportion of those in those very late years. And I don't think that local government funding fully and properly recognises that. So we need more funding in the system, something I was working on with my East Sussex colleagues. But the wider question goes to how do we retain and recruit, and that's about that Eastbourne story, that Eastbourne lifestyle, that this is an incredible place to live. This is a really strong community that welcomes people, where people can build a good life, but also that beautiful natural environment that we need to profile. In addition to that, those incoming to primary care, they're going to be looking for good schools, and they're going to be looking for childcare provision. And we've had really important success and investment around those measures too. So it's part of a whole package of investments and changes that we need to make sure that we have those primary care staff, because they are absolutely fundamental to our health and well-being. And we very often pivot to the hospital and the hospital trust. But first, of course, comes primary. And they are doing incredible work. I had the privilege of sitting in on one of the practices. I've never seen anything quite so impressive around the care and the compassion that I saw there that day.
Okay, thank you very much. Mike, you're removing your mask. You must have known that you were going to be next, although Josh Bradbury is also waiting. But,
I keep removing every available opportunity.
You just caught my eye, that was catching the speaker's eye this time. I was going to ask you to go next anyway, so over to you.
As has already been mentioned, public health information plays a big part in prevention If we can take the pressure off GPs, that would be part of the job. I know a little bit about this because my son actually wrote the National Inquiry into Universal Healthcare. And that inquiry found that actually if we started treating people according to their need rather than their want, then we would have a much better system. And the people who know their patient base best are the GPs. And they need to have more power in being able to profile the appointments that they can give to people. At the moment, they are, you have a fixed time to your appointments, and people do try and go over that sometimes, or have a little bit less, there's a little bit of leeway, but you can't solve some people's problems in a 10-minute appointment. So some kind of autonomy to GP surgeries would be beneficial. We need an NHS national workforce plan, a proper one. We haven't had one for many, many years, and that's why there is a shortage of medical professionals right the way through, from primary care through to specialist care. We need to fund it from taxing those super rich who Marx says aren't patriotic and will just leave the country. Actually, I believe that a lot of the rich in this country actually love our country and would be willing to pay 1% on over £1 billion or 2% over £10 billion to drop in the ocean today. We need to stop the abuse and pressure on GP receptionists.
Okay.
To treat them better.
Thank you. And Josh Beverley.
Well, trying to get a GP appointment these days is more difficult than trying to get a Glastonbury ticket. It's ridiculous. I was seriously ill in hospital a couple of months ago, back in April. I needed a follow-up GP appointment, and I've still not been able to get an in-person GP appointment, and it's July today, so we need some serious change. What does that look like? Well, prevention has been mentioned, and I think that really is the key. There was a really important report written some time ago now by Michael Marmot around the social determinants of health. And what we know is that if people are in poor housing situations, if people are experiencing poverty and the rest, then those increase risk factors when it comes to experiencing ill health, which then takes someone to a GP. And so we've spoken about some of those issues already, addressing the housing crisis, say, by building more homes, making sure that we're supporting those who are most vulnerable, accessing the food bank. Again, this has a big impact. Another thing we need to do is increase capacity. So Liberal Democrats have spoken about an NHS rescue package to the tune of several £1 billion funded by closing capital gains tax loopholes, which would include training 4,000 additional GPs to help build capacity and take pressure off folks like you, Dr. Brink. And then thirdly is the point around our town as an attractive place to work. Chris Whitty wrote a report about medical talent in seaside towns. One of the things that we suffer from is that we can recruit people from the north, but our radius doesn't go to the south because we can't recruit landmaids and sea creatures to work as GPs, whereas other places across the UK don't have that same competitive disadvantage. And so what we need to do on that front is big up some of the great things about our town, but address some of the things that may otherwise put people off. We've discussed those as well. Whether it is the sewage, whether it's the fact that we're losing key services at our hospital over the years gone by. We need to build these up to attract that talent.
Okay, thank you. What does the doctor have to say about all that?
I think all 6 candidates highlighted the national themes and the national resources that are needed to fund or pay or to recruit or attract staff at all levels of primary care. So it's not just about me as a general practitioner, it is about the nursing teams, the receptionist teams, and there were some nice things about how to make preventative care maybe a focus to help attract those across the country who want to come down here. Prevention was a focus, and we had specialist health clinics, other things mentioned. Those could be things that could attract people.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. In a few moments we're going to move to closing statements. You'll each have 30 seconds to make your closing statement. But before we do that, this is more of a personal question rather than a party political answer. And the question is that newly elected MPs, and for the purposes of this question we will extend it to newly re-elected MPs, get to make a maiden speech in the House of Commons, in which, by tradition, they speak in a non-controversial way about their constituency. So what would each of you tell your fellow MPs is your favourite place in Eastbourne? Let's start with Josh Beveridge. Your maiden speech in the House of Commons, what's your favourite place in Eastbourne?
My favourite place in Eastbourne is probably on the Downs. I love going for a walk on the Downs and ending up at a pub at one end or another, often at the pilot. Something else that you do in your maiden speech, if you're lucky enough to be elected, is pay tribute to predecessor. And one thing I would do is pay tribute to Caroline Ansell's teaching. She was once my supply teacher. But I'm talking everything I know.
Mr. Martin, what's your favourite place in Eastbourne?
I'm going to be really boring about this, and I would say anywhere in the bosom of my family. Eastbourne's a wonderful place to live. I'm a Yorkshireman originally, and I moved here because I wanted to have the equivalent of being between the moors and the sea. And so the next best thing is a lot warmer place between the Downs and the sea. And I've been here for 3.5 years, and I found Eastbourne to be one of the friendliest and welcoming places that I've ever lived in the country, and I've lived in quite a lot of places in this country. There was one thing I just wanted to ask was, we did one-to-one questions earlier, and I actually submitted a question, and I wasn't given the opportunity to ask it.
Okay, I haven't seen that, and I don't think that came through the chamber.
It was submitted to Christina, and I mean, I have it written down, and I could pass it to you if you like, but...
Can you just check it, Richard, very briefly? I don't want to delay things too much, but we do want to give you a fair opportunity, but if it has gone through the chamber, we just need to make sure that it is there. But in the meantime, let's ask others what their favourite places, or what they tell their fellow MPs is their favourite place in Eastbourne. Caroline Ansell.
Well, I confess Viventum first came to mind. But I think that's because I'm looking at my watch, and it is an amazing view. The church where I'm married, the town hall, which represents all that sort of civic Eastbourne, but it has to be the seafront. And I think anybody who lives in Eastbourne will recognise that. So anywhere, the beauty of the seafront is something quite extraordinary, and is what visiting ministers have always said when they have come down and seen that very beautiful esplanade and that beautiful architecture of the sea, the downland, the sort of the interplay there. And I think coming back from Westminster, always, every week, coming out at the station, and just that you can feel the sea air, and there's a very special quality about the sunshine here. So I'm going to go seafront, even though my first impulse was, in fact,
Paul Richards.
The pubs are available.
Yes. Like the pilot. Paul Richards, your favourite.
As you will know, Paul, I've written 4 books, but the 5th one coming out in September, a bit of a plug, is How to Write a Parliamentary Speech. And there is a section in that, of course, about how to write a maiden speech. So whoever gets to do that in a few weeks' time, I'll advance the chapter to you, and you can have a look how to do it. And of course, you have to name your favourite places in those speeches. And for me, I'm going to mortify both of my kids who are in the audience tonight. I'm going to say that when they were both little, we used to walk from Holywell down to the Italian Gardens, and I used to make up a whole story about trolls and wizards and all this sort of stuff going through. At each stage, we had a little thing of a troll under the bridge and all that. And I occasionally do that just purely out of nostalgia for when they were little, and that's one of my favourite places in Eastbourne.
Being an embarrassing dad.
to say that the seafront, I loved walking from the Sovereign Centre up to Holywell and back on a nice day. You can't beat it. The friendliness of people that you speak to, that you see, it beats anywhere in the country. The other thing I do like about Eastbourne is, happened last week, Devonshire Park, Eastbourne Tennis. What a fabulous attraction that is for Eastbourne. That's it.
Great, thank you. And Mark Asher.
Well, I don't really know. I lived in Brighton for 3 years. I lived in London for 25 years and more. And I've lived in East Sussex the last 9.5 years. And I came down here and I drove around and I can't put my finger on it. It's just a really nice town. I didn't really like Brighton. I don't know why. I just find it a really nice, pleasant town. It's not too big, it's not too small, it's got good countryside around it, and of course it's got the sea. So I would have to say, if I needed pick one place, there would be the Witherspoons, because the beer's cheap.
Okay, thank you all very much. That's very informative. We are going to go to closing statements now because the question that we asked will need further research. We can't ask it on the hoof. So I'm sorry that the question hasn't been through the chamber process.
I can't find it. To your email from my account. I can't find it.
Okay. So anyway, let's now give you each 30 seconds. This is your final hustings, I think, after a long